Millie from ZebraLab Web Solutions, and this video is all about what web hosting is and the different types of web hosting. Now, one really important point before we begin, this video is for non-technical people, and it assumes that you do not have the knowledge or the desire to manage your own web hosting environment. So all of these options that we're going to discuss are different versions of managed web hosting. Also note that because this video is for non-technical people, I'm going to simplify things and I'm going to leave out a lot of details. If you're looking for a really thorough technical, video about web hosting, this is not the video for you. This video is for small business owners who just, don't want to know everything there is to know about web hosting, but just want to figure out what situation works best for them. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's start by explaining in a very simple way what web hosting is. All right, so quick story. I used to give workshops at a local pottery studio about how to build your own website. And the first time that I tried to explain what web hosting was, it really didn't go very well. So everybody had this deer in a headlight kind of look, and they were very confused. But we kept talking about it, and eventually this woman says to me, she's like, okay, so web hosting is like an apartment building for websites. And I was like, yes, I can work with that. And I've used that analogy ever since. So a website needs a physical place to live. It needs a computer where it can store its files and its database. And that computer is generally a web server. And a web server is basically a special kind of computer that shows web pages to your browser, like Google Chrome or Safari or Edge. So a web server, like an apartment building, is going to have an address, and that address is called an IP address. And it actually usually has several IP addresses. And basically, when you are connecting your domain name to your web hosting, what you're doing is you're telling the internet what IP address to look for your website on, and subsequently what web server. I actually have a whole series about domain names and how to connect your domain name to your web hosting. So if you want more information about all of what we just talked about, you can click the link above and actually watch those videos before we talk about the different types of web hosting. Okay, so the first type of web hosting we're going to talk about is shared web hosting. Most of the websites on the internet actually use shared hosting. It's definitely the cheapest, and for most small business websites, it works pretty well. With shared hosting, you essentially share the web server with a lot of other websites, and there could be hundreds of other websites. If we're using the apartment analogy, it's a pretty basic apartment, and you have to share your resources with other tenants. With shared hosting, you're probably going to be limited to the amount of disk space you have, the amount of email addresses, maybe the amount of domain names you can attach to the website account. One of the cons of web hosting is that, say, another website on the same server is blowing up and getting a ton of traffic. That could actually make your website a little bit slow or maybe unresponsive because all of the resources are going to that other site. At ZebraLab Web Solutions, most of our hosting is shared web hosting, but we monitor our servers. So if we start to see a website get a lot more traffic, we discuss with the client and upgrade them to one of the other options that we're going to discuss. The next kind of hosting we're going to talk about is VPS hosting. VPS stands for Virtual Private Server, and it's usually the next option after you've outgrown your shared hosting. If we keep with the apartment analogy, VPS hosting is a little bit more like a condo, so you still have neighbors like you did with the other, apartment building, which would be the shared hosting, but you don't share resources, and your account's generally a bit bigger. With VPS hosting, you generally have more disk space, you have a lot more options with what kind of software you want to install, and if suddenly somebody else on the same server is getting a bump in traffic, it's not going to affect you. VPS hosting can be a really good option for a WordPress site that has a lot of plugins, it's pretty large, and it's really kind of having some struggles with shared hosting. Additionally, if a company has like maybe multiple websites and kind of wants to keep them all in the same place and not share resources with other websites. Another option for your hosting is having a dedicated server for your website. Having a dedicated server for your web hosting is a pretty drastic step, and it doesn't make sense for most small businesses unless perhaps your website is your business. Maybe you've had somebody build you a platform. Maybe people can go on and create their own accounts and you get a lot of traffic. In those situations, maybe a dedicated server makes sense. Obviously, as a web development company, we have like dedicated servers that we sell shared hosting on. A dedicated server is going to be by far the most expensive option. The next type of hosting that we're going to talk about is cloud hosting. And in a nutshell, cloud hosting allows you to essentially pay for the resources that you use. This type of web hosting is generally good for a startup web application or an e-commerce site where you expect to very suddenly have a very large spike in traffic. With cloud hosting, instead of renting space on one web server, you rent space in a data center that has a whole bunch of web servers. So again, particularly if you're a website that's going to have a lot of variation in your traffic, for example, maybe 1 month you have like a big marketing push and you get a ton of traffic, and then the next month maybe you're not having a big marketing push and you have a lot lower of traffic. That is like cloud hosting is definitely going to be the most cost-effective option for you. The last kind of web hosting I'm going to talk about is website platform hosting. Website platform hosting is the kind of hosting you have if your website is on Squarespace or Wix or Shopify. So basically, these companies have created software that allows you to create a website. And so if you want a Squarespace site, you have to host with Squarespace. These companies don't generally refer to it as web hosting. Generally, they have like a fee to use their platform, and everything is kind of included in that fee, including the web hosting, perhaps the domain name, maybe even emails. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this video and it helped you understand the different options you have when you're thinking about hosting your website. If you want to learn more about what we do at ZebraLab Web Solutions, head on over to ZebraLabWebSolutions.com. All right, have a great day. Bye.